My name is Veronica Maria with the news, the headlines at this hour. Study recommends split of the country's sole electricity generator and supplier, Eskom, to up efficiency. Also, Zbstv convicted of cashier theft and money laundering, Zomba High Court charged to give sentence later on July 30. And homeless right at home, that is a situation for some 1,500 people in Kasungu district, where government is failing to provide them place to stay 4 years on. And in sports, former Flames International says the country's football industry should undergo a complete overhaul if the national team is to begin producing results. I'm Veronica Mane, now the news in detail. A latest study on the performance of the Electricity Supply Corporation of Malawi, Eskom, has recommended that the company be split into more than one to enhance its efficiency. Currently, Eskom does both production and distribution, which experts have argued causes inefficiencies by Eskom. Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority Acting Chief Executive Officer Elias Hausi told Zodiak on Tuesday when adopted, the new approach would make it more competitive. Check and share my reports.
The recommendation to disintegrate Eskom into two follows a study supported by the Millennium Challenge Corporation on the performance of the corporation. MIRA Acting Chief Executive Officer Mr. Elias Hausi says should the recommendation be adopted, Eskom will be split into power generation company and power transmission company with different roles. The idea, he says, is to ensure growth in power capacity in the country.
If that is going to be achieved, what it means is the generation company would be able to attract other competitors, what we call independent power producers. If those come and they compete with the government generation company, they'll be producing electricity, and that electricity would be sold to the transmission company and the distribution. Then we can possibly realize growth in the electricity capacity. But otherwise, if we have only one Eskom, it means that all these people, when they are coming, they are having to be negotiating with Eskom, which is currently controlling all the three segments.
Mr. Hausi is optimistic that then access to electricity will be cheaper and easier.
If you look at the rules of competition, currently we have only one generation segment. If we have so many people generating, what it means is these people are going to compete, and that competition will be in terms of quality and also in terms of prices. So in terms of prices, we expect that prices for generation will be going down, and at the end of the day, that low price has to be passed on to the consumer in terms of a lower tariff. So the consumers stand to benefit from this.
Meanwhile, the Committee of Parliament on Natural Resources, Energy and Environment, through the Vice Chairperson, Mr. Alex Major, says Parliament would ensure that government acts in a transparent manner, making this a reality.
So we just heard the Minister talking in the Parliament, Honorable Bright Msaka, was saying that just in passing, but we are very, very worried on these issues because, first of all, even before the government comes out, they would have consulted, relevant stakeholders into these issues. But really, do we have the market to disintegrate Eskom? The other question is, these facilities are for the government. Which private companies that are taking this in? The government wants to tell us that they're going to sell all the machinery under Eskom. If that is come to the open, then we will discuss according to that time. But as of now, these are preliminary talks. We are really not happy with what government is doing.
Currently, Eskom handles generation, transmission and distribution of electricity in the country, for which it has come under fire for various inefficiencies. For Zodiak, I am Jacqueline Hema reporting.
Also, Zbstv, who pleaded guilty in the Zomba High Court Monday on charges of theft and money laundering of taxpayers' funds, will have to wait until July 30 to know the price he has to pay for stealing public funds. That is what High Court Judge Dr. Redson Kapindu said after he convicted Zbstv. Our reporter in Zomba, Kasimawi, was at the court on Monday.
Key suspect Oswald Zbstv has now finally been convicted for 2 offenses of conspiracy to commit fraud and money laundering after pleading guilty to the 2 charges during a court hearing on Monday. Judge Redson Kapindu, after hearing from both sides, convicted Mr. Lutepo, who is now being assisted by a wheelchair for movement, as he is reportedly failing to stand or walk on his own, according to lawyer for Mr. Lutepo, Oswald Mtupira. His client has pleaded guilty to the two offences after analyzing the evidence that the state, through Director of Public Prosecutions, Mere Kachare, presented in the court. Among the evidence presented, Mr. Lutepo used his two companies, IPS and O&G Construction Limited, to get money amounting to over 4 billion kwacha on goods that he never supplied to government. The two companies got money from Malawi Defense Force, OPC, among others. The court has also ordered Mr. Oswald Lutepo to declare all his assets by 21st June, and on 19th July, all Lutepo's property, which is outside the country, be transferred to Malawi. Meanwhile, the court has adjourned sentencing of Mr. Lutepo to 30th July 2016, following an application by the state through DPP Mere Kachare, who requested for deferment of the sentencing to allow the convict to cooperate with the state and to enable the state recover the money stolen through confiscation of Lutepo's property. For Zodiac in Zomba, this is Kasim Aubi reporting.
As the world commemorates the Day of the African Child today, a snap survey by Zodiac in the capital Lilongwe portrays that the African child continues to be defined by household chores they are expected to handle. Some of the children who spoke with ZBS continue to highlight how activities such as cleaning plates and sweeping their home compounds defines a good African child. In Kasungu district, some 1,500 people are virtually homeless at home. Government is failing to find where they should live after they were forced out of an area that forms part of Kasungu National Park some 4 years ago. And now, even when the traditional chief has made available some 40 hectares for the group, our reporter, Nonkubi, says authorities says it is not adequate for settlement.
Welcome to Ntundwala camp of homeless Malawians. Located about 80 kilometers west of Kasungu Boma, this camp is a temporary shelter of over 1,500 people of Malawian origin. Most of these are women and children. These people were displaced by poverty to work in tobacco estates in Kasungu. After being laid off from tobacco estates, some of these people secured land in Kasungu National Park, where park officials forcibly evicted them in 2012. The Malawi government then promised to relocate them to a permanent land within a month to establish themselves. But almost 4 years now, this has remained a lip service.
Kodi nkutata upatsani munda mungalime gogo mmene muonekera.
Ine ndikonzulima ngasindile ndiwana. Wana ndio mana katani ozigalima. Ine nduvurikira yani nduvurikira wana.
Going into the camp, poverty is evident. Women and children who are in majority here are the ones suffering the most. The homeless say they have no decent shelter to accord them privacy. They lack food, and land remains their greatest need, according to Mr. Alikanjo Bunongwe, chairperson for the homeless. Group chairman Tunduwal of this area says while government and well-wishers provide relief items periodically to the homeless, this has not been a solution at all. In 2012, Kasungu District Council identified a piece of land to relocate the homeless, but treasury failed to release funds to buy the land to relocate the homeless. And this time around, Chief Kawambu of the area is reportedly to have surrendered over 40 hectares for the council to relocate the people. Nevertheless, authorities say the land given is only enough for settlement, not for conversion.
Monga 1,000 chakuti koma families
and 143. Malo ali 44 hectares kukula kwake. Malo okhala akwanira koma malo olima ndi amene angavute.
There fears that the rights of these people will continue to be violated if government continues to neglect their plight year in, year out. For Zodiac, this is Noah Nkubwi, Kasungu.
I know this is going to be hard for our viewers to believe. It's just beyond human comprehensions. But communities of Chicago village in the area of traditional authority Malingachansi in Kotakota had a rude awakening on Sunday morning when usipa fish that one of the ladies in the area had bought for relish allegedly turned into clotted blood when cooking. The lady, Mrs. Gladys Chisale, says she bought the fish on Saturday evening from one of the business ladies at the Kotakota Boma market. Mrs. Chisale has told ZBS that this is the first time they have experienced such a thing. Mrs. Chisale says the substances were taken to Kotakota District Hospital for medical examination, but authorities there told them that they only do lab tests on things that were either consumed by human beings or are believed to be from human beings. You're watching News on Zodiac, live from our studios in Lilongwe, and I'm Veronica Mwani. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Before we proceed, a look at our main stories. Study recommends split of the country's sole electricity generator and supplier, ESCOM, to up efficiency. Also, Lutepo convicted of cash kit theft and money laundering, Zomba High Court charged to give sentence later on July 30. And homeless right at home, that is the situation for some 1,500 people in Kasungu district. And in sports, former Flames international player says the country's football industry should undergo a complete overhaul if the national team is to begin producing results. Moving on with the bulletin, as the country's prisons continue to be highly congested, efforts to review the Prisons Acts are gathering momentum. On Tuesday, stakeholders held a regional workshop in Lilongwe to review the Act with the aim of improving the country's prison conditions. Speaking during the workshop, chairperson for the Malawi Law Commission, Justice Ken Manda, said the country's Prison Act, enacted in April 1956, is now outdated. Helen Clark, the administrator of the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, will be in this country on a 3-day visit beginning tomorrow, June 17. Mrs. Clark will engage senior government officials, parliamentarians and civil society organizations in high-level discussions on key development issues in the country. Malawi is one of the 50 countries which were selected to conduct national consultations on priorities and means of implementation for the post-2015 development agenda. Ms. Clark, a former Prime Minister of New Zealand, is also chairperson of the United Nations Development Group, UNDG, a committee working on development issues. This is the third visit to Malawi by the UNDP administrator. And now we go to international news. At least 23 people have been killed and more than 100 injured in suicide attacks in the Chadian capital. Witnesses say attackers on motorcycles blew themselves up outside 2 police buildings. Chad's government blames Nigeria's militant Islamist group Boko Haram, but the group has not commented. Boko Haram has carried out frequent suicide bomb attacks during its 6-year insurgency in neighboring Nigeria. There are reports of a distressing scene outside the police headquarters where one of the bombs went off. And with that, we go straight to sports. A former Flames and international player has recommended complete overhaul of the country's football industry if the national team is to begin producing positive results. Peter Kinskaira was commenting on the firing of Yang Chimodzi and Jack Chamangwana as Flames coaches, saying football administrators are the ones to take the blame for their failure to address critical matters affecting the team.
To be very fair with my own country and as a dedicated patriotic footballer, we haven't done well. We haven't done well. I'm sure we cannot see ourselves improving. We are doing very badly. There are 2 things that I see here: improvement of football and where do we want football to be. The question should be, where do we want Malawi to be? Improvement of football is another. If you want to be a force to reckon with, you need complete overhaul from football association, technical people, up to footballers themselves. We need complete overhaul. In other words, what I mean is you need to start afresh. We need to go back to the drawing board, see where do we want to take Malawi? What is it that we want to do? We should have a plan, a strategy, and how to implement that strategy for us to achieve what we want to achieve. First of all, as a nation, we need to ask ourselves, what do we want to achieve in football? We should answer that question, then we should come back to the drawing board. How do we achieve what we want to achieve? Otherwise, as it is, all what we are trying to do is to achieve results. How we need to achieve results, nobody knows. I cannot just stand here criticizing, but I should also put forward suggestions. We need to start football from schools the way we started. I'll tell you today, my brother, if you go to where I come from, you would not believe came a player like me. But how did it happen? That's what we need to do. There is no football in town, I can assure you. There is no football in town. You go into the villages, you have got fantastic players. Players who can take Malawi where I want Malawi to be.
That's how we wrap up this edition of the news, but before we leave, the headlines once again. Study recommends split of the country's sole electricity generator and supplier, ESCOM, to up efficiency. Also, Lutepo convicted of cashgate theft and money laundering. Zomba High Court judge to give sentence later on July 30. Homeless right at home, that is the situation for some 1,500 people in Kasungu district. And in sports, former Flames international player says the country's football industry should undergo a complete overhaul if the national team is to begin producing results. That's the news. Thanks for watching. I'm Veronica Mwari. Good evening.